Hello, welcome to Culture Hash. Today, as you can see by the hat, we're going to talk about West Coast rapper ScHoolboy Q and his 5th studio album, CrasH Talk. ScHoolboy Q is the 4th member of West Coast hip-hop collective Black Hippie, and alongside J-Rock, Ab-Soul and Kendrick Lamar, he was part of this revival of the West Coast hip-hop scene in the mid to late 2010s. Like the other members of the collective, ScHoolboy Q is also signed to Top Dog Entertainment, one of the most innovative and forward-thinking record labels around. CrasH Talk comes 3 years after Q's most recent album, the Grammy-nominated and Ghostface Killer-inspired Blank Face LP. 3 years is a long time in hip-hop, and 2016 was a heady time when the likes of Designer and Fetty Wap were dominating the pop rap scene. The Blank Face LP was very different to this. It was very dark and moody and very much inspired by Ghostface Killer in the way that Q would recount these first-person hood narratives over somber and at times psychedelic influenced beats. Blank Face was also supported by great singles like the Kanye West assisted That Part, which was also remixed with a compelling twist by Black Hippie themselves a couple of weeks later. CrasH Talk isn't an album in the same vein as Blank Face. It's a lot more poppy and features some really obnoxious singles like Chopsticks. For the most part, I didn't enjoy the singles that came out before CrasH Talk, and Chopsticks just inspired a lot of this. It's just got a very one-note hook from Travis Scott, feels like a leftover from any of his recent albums. I'm not opposed to rap songs with just one-word choruses. ScHoolboy Q had that great song Yay Yay, and he just repeats Yay Yay, Yay Yay in the chorus. I really enjoyed that. However, unlike that track, Chopsticks doesn't really have great verses, and the hook is really obnoxious and grating from Travis Scott. Chopsticks, chopsticks, chopsticks. The more I listen to this track, the more obnoxious and grating the hook becomes to me. It's pretty crude as well. It's about meeting a girl and sex and like putting her legs up like chopsticks. It's pretty crude, it's pretty grating, and wasn't a great pre-single release. It didn't make me feel engaged towards CrasH Talk. The other single, Num Num Juice, is slightly better, but again, doesn't really capture me. Num Num Juice is a dark and menacing 2-minute track. Feels a bit more like a straight rap song, a bit more in tune with ScHoolboy Q's style. It's fast-paced and reminds me of some early tracks from the game. I wasn't gripped by these early singles, and listening to the album as well, there's quite a few of these poppy tracks. I suppose because Blank Face didn't really sell too many units, ScHoolboy Q might be moving a bit more towards the centre and just going for some of these big name pop features on here. Black is featured on the mediocre track Drunk. This one's got some choppy trap drums on here. Feels very trendy, very much on the vibe that everyone's doing at the moment. Black's hook is quite dark and somber, and I feel like this track is trying to replicate those feelings of being drunk, but it doesn't really do anything too interesting here. We've also got Lies featuring Ty Dolla $ign and YG. We know YG and Ty Dolla $ign came up very heavily behind DJ Mustard, and it just feels like a throwback to this style here, but done quite badly. DJ Mustard's signature production was instrumental to establishing YG and Ty Dolla $ign as established artists, but this fake DJ Mustard style beat with its overbearing synth and spaced out trap drums, it doesn't really do anything for the album and feels like a rip-off of this earlier iconic DJ Mustard style. Kid Cudi is also featured on the track Dangerous, again cashing in on this nostalgia value that he seems to have recently in this late career resurgence. Kid Cudi delivers a spaced out and dreamy chorus/hook on this track, and I think the beat does some interesting shifting towards the end. ScHoolboy Q's got some nice verses on here, but this track's pretty much okay again. I feel like the biggest problem with CrasH Talk is that it's catered a bit too much towards some of these features, and we don't really see ScHoolboy Q establish himself as much on these features. It feels a bit too broad and like he's trying too many different ideas with too many disparate artists. This is the second song on the album, and there's a nice transition with the opener Gang Gang. Gang Gang's quite braggadocious and aggressive, but Tails we hear ScHoolboy Q on a bit of a slower beat, and he's in a more introspective and reflective mood. The beat transitions nicely from the first track, which makes Gang Gang feel like a continuation on these ideas. On Tails we hear a bit more about ScHoolboy Q and these dark decisions that he's made and how it clouds his future. He reflects back on his drug dealing and gang banging past and really gives some nice perspective on ScHoolboy Q's choices as an earlier man. He said he could have gone to college, but he decided not to because he didn't want to leave his mates. And we get some nice background on ScHoolboy Q on this track. My favourite track on here is the Boy Wonder produced CrasH. The beat is a fantastic reimagining of Royce da 5'9's Boom. Boy Wonder brilliantly takes the foundation of this iconic beat and stretches it out quite nicely and adds some mid-tempo drums to really complement it. I like this track. Again, it's ScHoolboy Q on his own, which I think is when the album's at its strongest. ScHoolboy Q's got some great introspective bars on this track, talking about money and his life and how he needs to find a bit more balance in the actions that he takes. The best tracks on CrasH Talk are the ones like CrasH and Tales, where ScHoolboy Q's on his own and he can shape the architecture and structure of these songs just on his own without the help of some of these features, which I think distract some of the album's focus. Q closes CrasH Talk out with Attention, another highlight from this project. On here he reflects on his career and sort of pats himself on the back a bit for becoming friends with people like Jay-Z, talking to Nas and getting Grammy nominated with Blank Face. He talks about his lavish lifestyle but also gets a bit darker on this really somber and moody beat. The beat is dark and edgy and really sums up ScHoolboy Q's style. It sounds like it's been reversed a little bit, sounds a little bit trippy and weird. It does a good job of closing the album out, but I never really felt gripped by CrasH Talk. I'm disappointed by this album because I feel like ScHoolboy Q has regressed his style to the mean. And it is an enjoyable album, but I feel like none of the ideas are as original as we heard on his most recent and his history of projects actually. There's a regression to these pop sounds and big name guest features that don't really mesh with the ScHoolboy Q style. It's his lightest album in terms of mood, and there's a few too many of the feel-good, just generic tracks on here. Something that doesn't really suit ScHoolboy Q, and I feel like the tracks with the features he gets a bit buried compared to the ones where he's on his own. So for me, ScHoolboy Q CrasH Talk is worthy of 5 out of 10.